The council chamber floated in the darkness of space, a massive ring of steel and glass that had witnessed 3,000 years of peaceful debate. Today, that peace was dying. Taeyang stood before the assembled delegates, his 4 arms trembling. The Eldari diplomat had not slept in 6 days. Dark circles marked his pale blue skin, and his ceremonial robes hung loose on his thinning frame. Behind him, holographic displays showed the latest disaster. Telmar Prime, a world of 9 billion souls, had gone dark 3 hours ago. The Vrath had taken another planet. "We are losing," Taeyang said simply. His voice echoed in the silent chamber. "We have lost 7 core worlds in 2 months. 43 colonies have been abandoned. The Vrath fleet grows stronger with every system they conquer, while our forces grow weaker with every battle." Chancellor Heijin watched from her elevated seat. The Krell leader had ruled the council for 60 years, her chitinous armor bearing the scars of 100 diplomatic victories. But she had never known war. None of them had. The Galactic Council had maintained peace for centuries through negotiation and compromise. War was something primitive species engaged in before they learned better. The Vrath had taught them a hard lesson. Some species did not want peace. "What do you propose, Ambassador?" Heijin asked, though she already knew the answer. She had read his proposal. She had spent 3 sleepless nights considering it. Taeyang touched a control, and a new image appeared. It showed a small blue planet, third from its sun, rotating slowly in the display. Earth. The word appeared beneath it in a dozen languages. The chamber erupted. Delegates shouted in their various tongues, translator devices struggling to keep pace. A Talaxi representative actually stood and hissed, her scales flaring in anger. "You cannot be serious," one delegate cried. "The humans are quarantined for good reason. They are dangerous," another added. "Unstable. Violent." Taeyang raised his upper arms, calling for silence. "Yes," he said quietly. "They are all of those things. That is exactly why we need them." He changed the display. Now it showed an old recording, 400 years old, from the last time the Council had contact with humanity. The image showed a moon, shattered into 1 billion pieces. Earth's moon, destroyed by human weapons during their final world war. They had turned their own satellite into a kinetic weapon, dropping pieces of it onto enemy cities, until both sides surrendered in horror at what they had done. "The Council quarantined Earth because we feared what humans might do to the galaxy," Taeyang continued. "We called them monsters. We built warning stations around their system to ensure they never left their planet. We declared them too dangerous to join civilized space." He paused, letting his words sink in. "But the Vrath are killing us. They do not negotiate. They do not compromise. They do not want our territory or our resources. They want us extinct. And our civilized ways, our peaceful methods, our humane warfare." Heijin leaned forward. "You propose we release the monsters to fight monsters. I propose we ask for help from the only species in the galaxy that understands total war." The debate lasted 6 hours. Delegates argued passionately against contact. They cited human history, their violent nature, their inability to settle disputes without bloodshed. They spoke of the risks, the dangers of unleashing such a species on the galaxy. But with each passing hour, more reports came in. Another fleet destroyed, another colony evacuated, another 1,000,000 refugees fleeing Vrath advance forces. Finally, Chancellor Heijin called for a vote. The decision had to be unanimous, as per council law. She watched as, one by one, desperate delegates cast their votes. Yes. 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 When the last vote was tallied, Heijin sat back in her chair. "May the ancestors forgive us," she whispered. The message was crafted carefully. It traveled through hyperspace relays, crossing hundreds of light years in minutes, until it reached the edge of the Sol system. There, it encountered the warning stations, ancient satellites that had broadcast the same message for 4 centuries. Quarantine Zone. By order of the Galactic Council. Do not enter. The message slipped past them, diving deeper into the system, until it reached Earth's outer defense ring. General Doyun was reviewing casualty reports from the Mars colonies when the alert came through. A Priority 1 transmission from outside the solar system. He frowned. Nothing came from outside the solar system. Humanity had been alone for 400 years, ever since the Council had locked them away. He opened the message and listened. The voice was translated into Korean, but he could hear the desperation beneath the mechanical tones. This is Ambassador Tae-young of the Galactic Council, broadcasting to humanity. 400 years ago, we judged your species too violent for civilized space. We quarantined your world. We called you monsters. Doyun's jaw tightened. We were wrong to judge you. But we were not wrong about what you are. The ambassador's voice cracked. The Council is dying. An enemy we cannot defeat is destroying us, world by world. We have tried peace. We have tried negotiation. We have tried fighting by civilized rules. Nothing works. A pause. We rejected you. We imprisoned you in your own system. We called you monsters. Now we beg. Save us. We need monsters now. The message ended with coordinates and a repeating distress signal. Doyun sat in silence for a long moment. Then he forwarded the message to the Human Coalition government with a single line of recommendation. We should answer this. The vote took 3 days. The Coalition Council debated the risks and the opportunities. Some argued for isolation, for staying hidden behind their quarantine. Others argued for revenge against the council that had imprisoned them. Admiral Jiwon stood before the coalition and spoke plainly. They locked us away because we scared them. Good. Let's show them why they were right to be scared. And then let's show them we're more than just scary. We're effective. The vote was unanimous. Doyun received the authorization and immediately began assembling a fleet. 3 ships, he decided. Enough to show strength, not enough to seem like an invasion. He hand-picked the crews, veterans all. People who understood the difference between fighting and winning. As the ships prepared to depart, Doyun stood on the bridge of the lead vessel and looked out at Earth. Humanity had spent 400 years building, learning, preparing. They had never forgotten the galaxy that rejected them. Now, the galaxy needed them. Set course for Council space, Doyun ordered. The communications officer looked up. What should we tell them, sir? Doyun smiled, though there was no warmth in it. Tell them we're coming, and tell them to be ready. When humanity goes to war, we don't do it halfway. The 3 ships vanished into hyperspace, leaving Earth behind. In the council chamber, thousands of light years away, Tae-young received the response and felt both relief and terror wash over him. They had asked for help. Now they would see what human help truly meant. The human ships arrived without warning, dropping out of hyperspace at the edge of Council territory exactly 72 hours after Tae-young's message had been sent. The speed alone was shocking. It should have taken weeks to cross that distance. The humans had done it in 3 days. Commander Minseo stood on the bridge of the lead ship, watching the Council station grow larger on the view screen. Behind her, 2 more warships held formation, their dark hulls seeming to absorb the light of nearby stars. The vessels were nothing like Council ships, which were elegant curves of white metal and shimmering energy shields. Human ships were angular, brutal things, covered in thick armor plating and weapon ports. They're hailing us, the communications officer reported. Multiple frequencies. They seem nervous. Minseo almost smiled. Answer them. Visual. The screen shifted to show the interior of the Council station. A dozen species stood in a semicircle, all watching with various expressions of hope and fear. Tae-young stood at the front, his 4 arms clasped together in a traditional Eldari greeting. Commander Minseo, he said, his translator rendering his words in crisp Korean. Thank you for coming. We are grateful for... No. Minseo interrupted. You don't thank us yet. You don't know what you've asked for." The bluntness seemed to shock the assembled delegates. They were used to diplomatic niceties, to careful phrasing and respectful tones. Mincio had no time for any of that. "You have two choices," she continued, her voice flat and cold. "You can surrender full military command to human forces, effective immediately. We will prosecute this war according to human doctrine and human methods. You will not interfere, you will not question our tactics, and you will not countermand our orders." She paused, letting that sink in. "Or we turn around and go home, and you can watch your civilization end. Those are your only options. We didn't come here to negotiate." A Talaxi delegate, her scales flushed dark with anger, stepped forward. "You dare speak to the council with such—" "Yes," Mincio said simply. "I dare. You called us because you're dying. We came because we choose to help. But we help on our terms, or not at all. Decide now." Chancellor He Jin watched the human commander with careful eyes. 4 centuries ago, she had read the reports about humanity. Dangerous, unstable, too willing to resort to violence. Looking at Mincio's scarred face and cold eyes, she understood why her predecessors had been afraid. "Before we decide," He-jin said carefully, "perhaps you could explain your methods. We need to understand what we're agreeing to." Mincio nodded to someone off-screen. A moment later, Dr. Salmon appeared, joining the transmission. The xenobiologist looked almost friendly compared to Mincio, but her words were just as harsh. "The Council fights wars according to the Civilized Warfare Accords," Salmon began, reading from a datapad. "No targeting civilian infrastructure, no biological weapons, no chemical agents, no orbital bombardment of populated areas. Prisoners must be treated according to strict standards. Surrender must always be accepted." She looked up. "These are all good rules for civilized species fighting other civilized species. But the Vroth don't care about your rules. They execute prisoners. They bomb civilian centers. They use every weapon at their disposal. So you propose we abandon our principles?" The Talaxi delegate demanded. "Become monsters? Like them?" Captain Jinwoo stepped into view, his tactical officer's uniform bearing marks of a dozen campaigns. "You already are monsters to them," he said quietly. "The Vroth don't see you as civilized. They see you as prey." Salmon continued. "Human military doctrine is simple. We don't fight to win battles. We fight to ensure the enemy can never fight again. We don't seek to defeat our opponents. We seek to eliminate them as a threat, permanently." The chamber fell silent. Taeyang found his voice. "You're talking about genocide." "No," Mincio said sharply. "We're talking about winning. Genocide is killing a species because of what they are. War is stopping an enemy because of what they're doing. The Vroth can surrender at any time. If they choose not to, that's their decision." She leaned forward, her eyes hard. 400 years ago, the Council judged humanity as warmongers. You were right. We are very, very good at war. That's exactly why you called us. So stop acting shocked when we tell you what war actually looks like. He-jin raised a clawed hand, silencing the other delegates' protests. "If we agree to your terms, what happens next? We review your current military deployments and strategies. We identify your weaknesses and the Vrath's strengths. We develop a plan to win. Then we execute that plan with maximum efficiency and minimum casualties on your side. And maximum casualties on theirs," Jinwoo added. Another delegate, a crystalline being whose name Mincio didn't know, spoke up. "How can we trust you won't turn on us once the Vroth are defeated? You could conquer us easily." For the first time, Mincio's expression softened slightly. "Because we don't want to rule you. We want to go home. Earth is our world. We don't need yours. But we won't watch good people die when we can help. Even if those people once locked us away. She straightened. You have 1 hour to decide. After that, we leave. The transmission ended. On the council station, heated debate broke out immediately. Some delegates argued against surrendering control. Others pointed out that they had no choice. The Vroth had destroyed another colony ship that very morning. Time was running out. 58 minutes later, Chancellor Heijin transmitted the council's decision. They would accept human terms. Mincio received the message and allowed herself a small nod. Broadcast on all Vroth frequencies, she ordered. Military and civilian bands? Both. The communications officer looked uncertain. What message, Commander? This is Commander Minseo of the Human Expeditionary Force, broadcasting to the Vroth Dominion. You have occupied 27 council worlds. You have 72 hours to withdraw all forces from all occupied territories. This is your only warning. Comply, or face the consequences. The message was sent. Across Vroth-controlled space, military commanders received the transmission and forwarded it to their superiors. Eventually, it reached Queen Scrotha herself, the supreme ruler of the Dominion. The Queen watched the recording of the human commander and clicked her mandibles in what might have been laughter. A new species, making threats. How amusing. She had conquered 17 civilizations. These humans would be no different. She ordered a response prepared. When human forces next tried to contact the Vroth, they received a data package. It contained video of council prisoners being executed, their bodies displayed in rows. The package was forwarded to Mincio's ship. The commander watched it in silence. Her crew waited, expecting rage or disgust. Instead, Mincio simply closed the file and turned to her tactical officer, Jinwoo. Update our operational parameters. No quarter will be given to Vroth military forces. They've made their choice clear. Why? Jinwoo. Find 17 where? IC 1212S. Understood, Commander. Mincio opened a channel to Admiral Jiwan, who commanded the overall human fleet en route from Earth. Admiral, the Vroth have rejected our warning. We are clear to proceed with full operational freedom. Jiwan's voice came back steady and cold. Confirmed. You have authorization to use any means necessary. Show them what human war looks like. Mincio turned to her crew. Set course for Talaxis 7. It's the closest occupied world. We're going to take it back. And then? Her executive officer asked. And then, we're going to take them all back. Every single world. And we're going to make sure the Vroth regret ever hearing about the Galactic Council. The 3 human ships began moving toward Vroth space. Behind them, on the council station, Taiyang watched them go and wondered what he had unleashed. He had asked for help. Now he would see what human help cost. In her throne room, Queen Scrotha prepared her forces for battle. She anticipated an easy victory. The humans were one species. The Vroth controlled millions of soldiers across dozens of worlds. She had no idea what was coming. Talaxis 7 hung in space like a jewel, its blue oceans and green continents marred by the dark smudges of Vroth occupation. Orbital stations surrounded the planet, bristling with weapons. The Vroth fleet numbered 47 warships, a formidable force by council standards. Admiral Jiwan studied the tactical display from her flagship, which had just arrived with reinforcements. Beside her, Commander Minseo pointed out the enemy positions. Standard Vroth defensive formation, Minseo noted. Their capital ships form a screen here, with lighter vessels positioned to intercept any assault. They're expecting a frontal attack. Then we won't give them one, Jiwan replied. She turned to Lieutenant Nari, the drone warfare specialist. Deploy the swarm. Nari's fingers flew across her console. Swarm away. On the council observation ship positioned at a safe distance, Taeyang and several other delegates watched the human attack unfold. They expected to see the 3 human ships engage the Vroth fleet directly. Instead, they saw something else entirely. Thousands of small objects poured from the human vessels, tiny specks that scattered across the battle space like seeds on the wind. The objects were barely larger than a human fist, almost invisible to sensors. "What are those?" Taeyang asked. The human liaison officer, a young woman named Isul, checked her datapad. "Hunter-killer drones. Autonomous weapons platforms. We've deployed 10,000 of them." 10,000? A Talaxi delegate's scales flushed with shock. That's excessive. That's effective," Isul corrected. The drones moved with purpose, spreading throughout the battle space in a pattern that seemed random but clearly wasn't. The Vrath noticed them too late. By the time they started firing point defense weapons, the drones were already among them. But they didn't attack the way the Council expected. The drones ignored the heavily armored hulls of the Vrath ships. They ignored the weapon systems and shield generators. Instead, they targeted specific, vulnerable points. Life support vents, engine cooling systems, communication arrays, command and control nodes. Each drone carried a small explosive charge, barely powerful enough to damage a ship's hull. But they didn't need to damage hulls. They just needed to disable critical systems. Within 6 hours, every Vrath ship in orbit was crippled. Their weapons fell silent. Their engines went dark. Their communications went dead. The mighty Vrath fleet drifted helplessly in space, their crews trapped inside dying vessels. "They're suffocating," Taeyang whispered, horrified. "The humans destroyed their life support." Isul didn't look up from her datapad. "They can still surrender. We've broadcast surrender terms on all frequencies. Any crew that abandons ship and submits to capture will be rescued and treated according to the warfare accords. And if they don't surrender, then they've made their choice." The Vrath didn't surrender. Their culture considered surrender worse than death. So they died, one by one, as the air in their ships ran out. Only when the orbital space was clear did the human ground assault begin. Colonel Hajun commanded the Marines, and his approach was just as brutal as the orbital battle. Precision strikes from orbit destroyed every Vrath garrison simultaneously. Not with massive explosions that would damage the surrounding cities, but with carefully calculated kinetic strikes that punched through the garrison roofs and eliminated the Vrath inside while leaving the buildings themselves mostly intact. "How?" a Council military observer asked, stunned. "How did they calculate those strikes so precisely?" "We've been monitoring this planet for 3 days," Hajun explained over the command channel. "We mapped every Vrath position down to the meter. We know where they sleep, where they eat, and where they keep their weapons. We waited until we knew exactly where every Vrath soldier was, and then we hit them all at once. The surviving Vrath forces scattered, trying to regroup. That's when Lieutenant Nari's ground drones deployed. These were different from the orbital variants. These were hunters, equipped with thermal imaging, motion sensors, and predictive algorithms that could track fleeing targets through buildings and underground tunnels. The drones didn't carry weapons. They didn't need to. They simply marked targets and transmitted coordinates to human Marines, who eliminated each Vrath soldier with clinical efficiency. Taeyang watched the battle feeds with growing horror. "This isn't war. This is an extermination. This is what you asked for." Isil replied quietly. "The Vrath won't surrender. They won't negotiate. They fight to the death. We're simply obliging them." 14 hours after the assault began, Talaxis 7 was liberated. The human Marines established security perimeters and began searching for Council civilians who had survived the occupation. Medical teams deployed, treating the wounded and distributing supplies. The efficiency was staggering. The humans had freed a planet in less time than it took the Council to organize a single battle group. But the cost shocked everyone. Council civilian casualties, 0. Infrastructure damage, minimal. The cities were intact. The orbital stations were disabled, but repairable. Vrath casualties, 100%. Not a single Vrath soldier survived. Dr. Salmon tried to explain to the horrified Council delegates. "We calculated every strike to preserve your people and infrastructure. The Vrath chose death over surrender. That's not our fault. That's their culture. You could have found a way. A delegate protested. You could have forced them to surrender. How? Salman asked. By torturing them? By threatening their families? Would that have been more civilized? We gave them a choice. They made it. The argument was interrupted by reports from across Vrath-controlled space. Queen Scrotha had received word of the Talaxis 7 disaster. In response, she had ordered a brutal crackdown on occupied worlds, executing thousands of council prisoners. But she had also ordered something else. Footage of the Talaxis 7 battle was being broadcast on every Vrath communication channel. The images showed disabled ships, destroyed garrisons, and the complete annihilation of Vrath forces. The effect was immediate. On 5 occupied worlds, Vrath commanders received the footage and made a decision their culture rarely allowed. They evacuated, without waiting for orders, without fighting. They simply gathered their forces and left, abandoning their positions before the humans could arrive. Commander Minseo watched the intelligence reports with satisfaction. They're learning. Fear is a weapon too. Admiral Jiwan nodded. Continue the campaign. Hit the next occupied world. Keep the pressure on. Don't give them time to regroup or fortify. Over the next 3 weeks, human forces liberated 18 more worlds. The pattern was always the same. Precise orbital strikes, drone swarms eliminating Vrath positions, Marine forces cleaning up survivors, 0 council casualties, 0 Vrath survivors. The galaxy watched in awe and terror. The humans fought like nothing the council had ever seen. They didn't waste time with honor or glory. They didn't take prisoners or show mercy. They simply won, quickly and completely. Queen Scrotha watched her empire crumble and finally understood the mistake she had made. The council had been easy prey because they fought civilized wars. The humans didn't fight civilized wars. They fought to win. She pulled her remaining forces back to Krelthor, her fortress world. There, she would make her stand. There, she would show these humans that the Vrath were not so easily defeated. She had one advantage left. 2 million council prisoners, captured during the early days of the war. She positioned them on orbital platforms around Krelthor, using them as living shields. When the humans arrived, they would have to choose: attack and kill the prisoners, or negotiate. For the first time in weeks, Queen Scrotha smiled. She had found humanity's weakness. They claimed to be helping the council. Surely they wouldn't murder 2 million innocents. She sent a message to the approaching human fleet, explaining her trap and demanding terms. The response came from General Doyun himself, who had arrived to take personal command of the final assault. The message was simple, only 3 sentences long. You have 24 hours to release the prisoners and surrender. After that, we will demonstrate why humanity was quarantined. There will be no further warnings. Number 1. Thanks for watching. Queen Scrotha laughed when she heard it. An empty threat. Humans were soft. Just like the council. They would negotiate. She was about to learn just how wrong she was. General Doyun stood on the bridge of his command ship, studying the tactical display of Krelthor. The Vrath fortress world was a nightmare of orbital defenses and weapon platforms. Surrounding it, like a grotesque shield, were the prisoner platforms. 2 million council civilians, held in crude habitats that barely sustained life. Captain Yunji, his intelligence officer, stood beside him. The platforms are positioned to maximize our dilemma, she said quietly. Any attack vector that hits military targets will also hit at least some prisoner platforms. Queen Scrotha chose her positions well. She's betting we won't sacrifice innocents, Doyun observed. Will we? Doyun didn't answer immediately. He pulled up the casualty reports from the past 6 weeks of fighting. 23 worlds liberated. 0 council civilian casualties. The humans had fought with precision and care, always protecting the innocent, even as they destroyed their enemies. But Krelthor was different. This wasn't a occupied world that could be freed. This was the Vroth homeworld, fortified and defended by their entire remaining fleet. And Queen Skratha had just changed the rules of engagement. Ambassador Taeyang arrived on the bridge, breathing hard. He had rushed from the observation ship the moment he heard about the prisoner situation. "General, please, we must negotiate. 2 million lives are at stake." "I'm aware," Doyun said calmly. "Then you understand we cannot attack. We must find another way." "What other way?" Yoonji asked. "The Queen won't release them. She won't negotiate. In good faith. She's using your people as a shield, and she'll keep using them until either we give up or they die of neglect on those platforms." Taeyang's forearms trembled. "Then we offer her terms. Safe passage for her forces. Territorial concessions. Whatever she wants. And next time?" Doyun turned to face the ambassador. "What happens when the next enemy realizes humans can be manipulated with hostages? How many more will die because we taught the galaxy that threatening innocence works against us? You're talking about principles while my people die. I'm talking about saving billions by refusing to save millions." Doyun's voice remained level. "If we negotiate now, every species in the galaxy will know that human mercy has a price. They'll know how to stop us. And your civilization will face this same choice again and again." Taeyang stared at him in horror. "You're actually considering attacking. You're considering killing 2 million innocent people. I'm considering all our options." Before Taeyang could respond, a priority message came through. Queen Skratha had executed 10,000 prisoners. Their bodies were ejected from the platforms, left to drift in space as a demonstration of her resolve. The bridge fell silent. Everyone watched the screens, showing the floating corpses. Doyun's expression didn't change, but his jaw tightened. He opened a communication channel directly to Krelthor. "This is General Doyun. Your deadline is unchanged. 24 hours to release the prisoners and surrender. After that, we take action." He cut the channel before the Queen could respond. Then he turned to his staff. "Begin evacuation procedures for all Council worlds within 50 light-years of Krelthor. Priority 1. Every civilian transport we can spare." Admiral Jiwon frowned. "That's a massive operation. It will take days and expose our logistics network. May I ask why?" "I think Ender Resard. I think the readed. Resardation speeded. We're removing witnesses." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Taeyang understood first. His face, already pale, went completely white. "No. You can't. You can't." Doyun finally met his eyes. "You asked us to save your civilization. We will. But the Vrath will never threaten anyone again. I need you to understand what that means. I understand you're planning mass murder. I'm planning to win a war." Doyun's voice hardened. "The Vrath have killed millions of your people over 3 decades. They've destroyed worlds and genocided entire species. They take no prisoners except as hostages. They negotiate in bad faith. They see mercy as weakness." He gestured to the tactical display. "Queen Skratha is betting we're like the Council, that will sacrifice strategic victory for short-term compassion. She's wrong. We're not the Council. We're humanity. And we're going to teach the galaxy a lesson about what happens when you take our mercy for granted." Taeyang backed away. "I thought you were better than this. We are better than this. That's why we gave them 24 hours. That's why we're trying to save as many prisoners as possible. But we're also effective. And sometimes being effective means making choices that haunt you forever." The ambassador fled the bridge. Unji watched him go, then turned to Doyun. "He's right. You know. This will haunt us." "I know." Doyun sat down in the command chair. suddenly looking very tired. But it will save his civilization. That's what he asked for. That's what we'll give him. The next 20 hours passed in tense preparation. Human ships spread across nearby systems, evacuating Council civilians. Medical teams prepared for mass casualty treatment. Rescue vessels positioned themselves as close to Krell Thor as they dared. Queen Scrotha watched the preparations and smiled. The humans were bluffing. All this activity was just theater. They would negotiate. They had to. She sent another message. More executions. Another 1,000 prisoners died. Still, the humans did not negotiate. With 1 hour remaining on the deadline, Chancellor Heijin herself contacted Do-yoon. The ancient Krell leader's voice shook as she spoke. General, I am begging you. As the leader of the council, as someone who has served peace for 60 years, I am begging you, do not do this. You said the same thing to Ambassador Taeyang 6 weeks ago, Do-yoon replied. You begged him not to contact us. You knew what we were. You called us anyway. You don't get to be shocked now. There must be another way. There is. The Queen can surrender. She won't. Then she's chosen this outcome. Not us. Heijin was silent for a long moment. I will never forgive you for this. I know. I'll never forgive myself. But your great-grandchildren will live because of this choice. That's what matters. Number 4. The deadline passed. Queen Scrotha waited for negotiations to begin. Instead, she received a different message. General Do-yoon's face appeared on every screen across Krell Thor. This is General Do-yoon of the Human Expeditionary Force. The deadline has passed. You were warned. What happens next is your responsibility, not ours. The transmission ended. Queen Scrotha laughed. Empty threats. They won't. She stopped. Her sensor operators were screaming warnings. A massive energy signature had appeared near the human fleet. Something was charging up, building power on a scale the Vrath had never seen. Captain Unji stood at her station, her hand hovering over the activation control. Beside her, Do-yoon watched the display showing the prisoner platforms. Sir, Unji said quietly. Last chance to abort. Do-yoon closed his eyes briefly. He thought of the 2 million people about to die. He thought of the billions more who would live. He thought of every future war that would be prevented by this single, terrible act. Fire, he said. Unji activated the weapon. The Cascade Array had been humanity's most closely guarded secret, developed during their centuries of isolation. It wasn't a bomb or a missile. It was a gravitational disruptor, a device that could destabilize a planet's core. The beam struck Krell Thor's surface and penetrated deep, all the way to the molten core. There, it began to work, disrupting the delicate gravitational balance that held the planet together. Alarms screamed across every Vrath ship and installation. Seismic sensors went mad. The planet itself began to shake. 8 hours until catastrophic failure, a human technician reported. Do-yoon opened a channel. All Vrath forces, this is your final warning. Krell Thor will be destroyed in 8 hours. Evacuate immediately. Chaos erupted across the Vrath fleet. Captains shouted contradictory orders. Some ships began fleeing immediately. Others waited for orders from the Queen. Queen Scrotha sat frozen on her throne, finally understanding. The humans weren't bluffing. They were going to destroy her world, her home, everything, and she had 2 million hostages that were now worthless. Worse than worthless. They were 2 million people she would have to evacuate along with her own forces if she wanted any hope of escape. She screamed orders. Release the prisoners. All ships begin evacuation. Move. Human rescue vessels swept in like predators. They had been waiting for this moment, positioned for maximum response speed. As Vrath ships scrambled to escape, human crews boarded the prisoner platforms and began extracting Council civilians. It was a race against time and physics. The planet was tearing itself apart. Ships launched in all directions, desperate to escape the gravity well before it collapsed. The humans worked with desperate efficiency. One platform after another was cleared. But there were so many platforms, and time was running out. In the end, they saved 1,970,000 prisoners. 30,000 died when their platforms failed during the evacuation, their habitats torn apart by gravitational stress. The Vrath fleet escaped, but barely. They left behind their weapons, their equipment, everything that wasn't essential. They fled into deep space, scattered and broken. Behind them, Krell-Thor died. The planet collapsed inward, its core failing completely. The entire world imploded in a matter of minutes, taking with it 3 centuries of Vrath civilization and 40% of their total population. The shockwave from the collapse destroyed the remaining orbital platforms and scattered debris across the system. General Doyun watched it happen. Beside him, Unji was crying silently. Across the fleet, hardened soldiers sat in stunned silence, processing what they had just done. They had won. The Vrath were broken. The war was effectively over, but the cost would haunt them all forever. The destruction of Krell-Thor broke the Vrath dominion in ways that went beyond simple military defeat. Within hours of the planet's collapse, every remaining Vrath world transmitted unconditional surrender. The messages were identical, drafted in haste by scattered commanders who no longer had a central government to guide them. The war had lasted 79 days from the moment human ships entered Council space. 3 decades of Vrath expansion ended in less than 3 months. General Doyun stood in the command center, reading surrender terms from 17 different Vrath colonies. Each one offered complete capitulation. No negotiations, no demands. Just surrender. They're terrified, Captain Yunji observed. Her eyes were still red from crying, but her voice was steady. They think we'll destroy their worlds too. Will we? Admiral Jiwan asked. She had arrived from the evacuation operations, exhausted and covered in dust, from helping load refugee ships. Doyun shook his head. No. We accept their surrender. We establish monitoring stations to ensure compliance. And then we go home. He paused. We've done enough. The formal surrender ceremony was held on the Council Station, the same place where Taeyang had first proposed contacting humanity. Now, representatives from every Vrath colony stood in chains before the assembled delegates, signing documents that ended their empire. Chancellor Heijin presided over the ceremony, but her movements were mechanical, her voice hollow. She had not spoken to General Doyun since before Krell-Thor's destruction. She had not forgiven him. She suspected she never would. The ceremony concluded with the traditional council blessing, words of peace and reconciliation that sounded obscene in the current context. 30,000 council civilians had died in the evacuation. Billions of Vrath had died when their homeworld collapsed. There was no peace in this room. Only exhausted relief that the killing had stopped. Afterward, the council organized a celebration. They called it a ceremony honoring humanity's intervention. But everyone knew it was more complicated than that. The humans had saved the council. They had also showed the galaxy exactly how dangerous they truly were. Taeyang found himself standing on the ceremonial platform, preparing to give a speech he had spent 3 days writing and rewriting. Around him, thousands of council citizens gathered, waving banners and cheering. They were grateful to be alive. They were terrified of their saviors. He began to speak. His words translated into 100 languages. 79 days ago, I sent a message to Earth. I asked humanity for help. I admitted that 400 years ago, we had judged them too harshly, imprisoned them unfairly. I begged them to save us from an enemy we could not defeat. He paused, looking out at the crowd. They came. They answered our plea. And they saved us. The crowd cheered. Taeyang waited for silence before continuing. They saved us using methods we would never use ourselves. They fought with efficiency that shocked us. They showed mercy only to those who surrendered, and ruthless destruction to those who did not. His voice caught slightly. They destroyed an entire world to end this war. The cheering had stopped. The crowd was silent now, uncomfortable. 30,000 of our people died because of that choice. Billions of wrath died. We must ask ourselves, was it worth it? Taeyang looked directly at where General Doyun stood among the other human officers. I don't know. I honestly don't know. But I know this. Our civilization survives. Our children will grow up free from the Vroth threat. And that is because humanity did what we could not. He stepped back, and Chancellor Heijin moved forward to conclude the ceremony. But before she could speak, General Doyun walked to the platform uninvited. The crowd murmured in surprise. This wasn't part of the program. Doyun took the speaker's position and looked out at the assembled masses. He did not smile. He did not wave. He simply spoke in a voice that carried across the chamber. 400 years ago, your ancestors looked at humanity and called us monsters. They saw how we fought each other, how we destroyed our own moon to win a war, and they decided we were too dangerous for civilized space. They locked us away and hoped we would either change or destroy ourselves. He paused. They were right. We are dangerous. We are capable of terrible things. We proved that at Krelthor. Some in the crowd shifted uncomfortably, Doyun continued. But your ancestors were also wrong. They assumed that being dangerous meant being evil, that being capable of violence meant being unable to control it. He gestured to the assembled council delegates. We came when you called. We fought your war, and now we're leaving. We're not demanding tribute. We're not claiming territory. We're not installing a puppet government. We're going home. We didn't do this for glory or conquest. We did it because you asked, and because it was right. Remember that the next time you call someone a monster, remember that sometimes you need monsters to fight monsters. The chamber was absolutely silent. Doyun turned and walked away without waiting for a response. Later that night, as human ships prepared to depart council space, Captain Yunji found Taeyang standing alone on an observation deck, watching the stars. Ambassador, she said softly. May I join you? Taeyang nodded. For a while, they stood in silence. I owe you an apology, Taeyang finally said. When you first arrived, I thought you were arrogant, brutal. I thought you didn't care about the lives you were affecting. We cared, Unji replied. Every death at Krelthor haunts us. But we cared more about preventing future deaths. Sometimes, caring means making terrible choices. I don't know if I can forgive what happened. We don't ask for forgiveness. We just ask that you remember we did what you asked us to do. Taeyang turned to face her. What will you do now? Your quarantine is lifted. You could join the council, become part of the galactic community. Unji smiled sadly. I think we'll stay separate a while longer. The galaxy isn't ready for humanity as neighbors. Maybe in another few centuries. She looked out at the stars. Besides, we learned something during our isolation. We don't need the galaxy. Earth is enough. Will you come if we call again? I hope you never need to call again. But yes, if you truly need help, if you face extinction, we'll answer. That's what we do. She left him there, returning to her ship. Taeyang watched the human vessels begin their departure, their dark hulls disappearing into the black. On Earth, news of the victory had already spread. There were celebrations in some cities, protests in others. People argued about whether they had done the right thing. The debate would continue for years, perhaps forever. General Doyun returned home to a mixed reception. Some called him a hero. Others called him a war criminal. He accepted both labels without comment. He had made his choice. He would live with the consequences. Ambassador Taeyang's final reflection on the war was recorded in the council archives, a document that would be studied by historians for generations. We begged for aid, he wrote. We called upon the one species we had deemed too dangerous for civilized space. They came, and they brought total war. Not war as we understood it, with rules and honor and mercy, but war as they understood it. Total, brutal, and effective. We survived. Our civilization continues. Our worlds are free. But we paid a price beyond simple casualties. We learned that survival sometimes requires becoming the thing we fear. We learned that salvation can wear the face of a monster. The humans returned to Earth, to their isolation. But we will never forget what they did. We will never forget what they are capable of. And we will pray we never need to call them again. He paused in his writing, then added one final line. Unless there is no other choice. The document was sealed and filed. The war was over. The galaxy began the long process of rebuilding. But in secret military councils, in classified briefings, in the minds of every species that had witnessed humanity's intervention, a new understanding took root. The humans were dangerous, yes, but they were also effective. And if the choice ever came down to extinction or calling for human aid, the choice was obvious. Humanity had shown the galaxy what total war looked like. They had saved the Council and destroyed the Vrath. They had killed billions to save trillions. And they had done it all in less than 3 months. The quarantine was officially lifted. But an invisible barrier remained. Species traded with Earth, communicated politely, maintained diplomatic relations. But they kept their distance. They remembered Krell Thor. On Earth, life continued. The soldiers returned home. The ships were decommissioned. The weapons were mothballed. Humanity went back to building, creating, living. But in the back of every human mind was a quiet knowledge. They had been called monsters once, and they had proven it true. They had also proven that sometimes the galaxy needed monsters. The records of the war were preserved in both human and council archives. Future generations would study them, debate them, learn from them. But one truth remained constant across all interpretations. When the Galactic Council had begged for aid, humanity had answered. And they had brought exactly what was needed, at exactly the price that would be demanded. Total war, complete victory, and a lesson the galaxy would never forget. In the end, perhaps that was the greatest gift humanity gave the Council. Not just freedom from the Vrath, but the knowledge that somewhere in the galaxy there existed a species willing and able to do what must be done. A species that understood that sometimes peace can only be preserved through the credible threat of overwhelming violence. A species that, when called, would answer, no matter the cost.